First Blood. The sensor array aboard the Imperial Dreadnought Eternal Dominion chimed with lazy precision. Commander Vekthar barely glanced at the display, his 4 eyes half-lidded with the boredom of another routine patrol along the outer rim. Unknown contact. Sir, reported Sensor Officer Tillith, her mandibles clicking with mild curiosity. Bearing 27 Mark IV, single vessel, emerging from the uncharted territories. Vekthar's secondary eyes focused on the tactical display. A blip. One insignificant blip in the vast darkness of space. The Galactic Empire had ruled these sectors for 3,000 years. Nothing emerged from the uncharted zones that posed any threat. The occasional pirate vessel, perhaps. Sometimes a lost colony ship from one of the lesser species. Classification? He asked, his voice carrying the casual authority of someone who had never encountered real danger. Tillith's fingers danced across her console. Unknown design, Commander. Hull composition suggests primitive metallurgic construction. No energy signature matching any known civilization. Analyzing. Sir, this is peculiar. The vessel appears to be from the species catalogued as human. Designation: pre-contact, technological infancy, quarantine zone Beta 7. A ripple of amusement passed through the bridge crew. Humans. The galaxy had nearly forgotten about them, a species barely crawling out of their single star system, quarantined by imperial decree until they either destroyed themselves or proved marginally useful. Humans? Vekthar's mandibles spread in the Orith equivalent of a smile. Have they finally built a ship capable of leaving their little prison? How ambitious. He leaned back in his command throne, the ceremonial armor of his rank gleaming under the bridge's amber lighting. Open a channel. Standard protocol. Inform them they've entered Imperial space without authorization. They are to power down their engines and prepare for inspection. The communications officer complied, broadcasting the message in 17 galactic languages. The human ship continued on its trajectory, silent. No response, sir. Vekthar's amusement faded slightly. Fire a warning shot. Perhaps they need encouragement to understand their situation. The Eternal Dominion's forward plasma cannon, a weapon capable of vaporizing a small moon, discharged a controlled burst. The crimson bolt lanced through space, calculated to pass within 100 meters of the human vessel's bow. What happened next would be analyzed in Imperial war colleges for generations. The human ship didn't flinch, didn't alter course. Instead, it accelerated directly toward the Imperial formation, moving with a speed that made Tillith's mandibles lock in shock. Impossible. That acceleration would crush any organic crew. Evasive maneuvers. Vekthar barked, but the words came too late. The human warship, for it was clearly a warship now, bristling with weapon ports that hadn't been visible moments before, opened fire. But not with plasma, not with particle beams, not with any weapon the Empire recognized. Kinetic rounds. Thousands of them. Railgun projectiles moving at relativistic speeds, each one guided by targeting systems that predicted Imperial evasive patterns with terrifying accuracy. The Eternal Dominion shuddered as the first wave struck its shields. Then the second wave. Then the third, each impact calibrated to strike the exact same points, creating cascading failures in the shield matrix. Shields at 60%, 50%. Commander, they're targeting the emitter nodes. Vekthar's blood ran cold. Shield emitter nodes were internal, protected, deliberately hidden in Imperial ship design. This primitive species shouldn't even know they existed, let alone be able to target them through active shielding. All ships. Combat formation. Concentrate fire on that vessel. The 7 ships of his patrol fleet maneuvered into the Talon formation, a battle strategy that had dominated galactic warfare for a millennium. Each ship positioned to provide overlapping fields of fire while covering each other's vulnerable points. The human ship ignored the formation entirely. Instead of engaging the fleet head-on, it did something no civilized species would dare. It dove beneath the formation, where the massive Imperial Dreadnought's ventral weapons had limited firing arcs. As it passed, it released a payload that Tillith's sensors initially classified as debris. They weren't debris. They were mines. Smart mines. The explosions were surgical. Each mine detonated against specific points on each Imperial hull. Engine clusters, sensor arrays, communication relays. Not enough to destroy, but perfectly calculated to cripple. Within 40 seconds, Vekthar's fleet had been reduced from a coordinated fighting force to 7 isolated ships. blind and half-deaf, struggling to track a single enemy that moved like nothing they'd ever encountered. How? Vekthar whispered, staring at his fractured tactical display. How do they know our weaknesses? The human ship completed its pass and came about, moving in a spiral pattern that kept it in the firing shadows of every Imperial vessel simultaneously. It was a maneuver that required real-time calculation of 7 different ships' weapons arcs, accounting for their rotation, their damaged systems, their probable responses. No species fought like this. Galactic warfare was civilized, predictable, governed by 3,000 years of tactical doctrine. You formed up. You traded fire. The superior force won. This wasn't civilized. This was predatory. Emergency transmission to High Command, Vekthar ordered, his voice finally showing cracks of fear. Priority Alpha 1. We've engaged a human warship. Repeat, human warship. They possess advanced targeting systems, unconventional tactics, and detailed knowledge of Imperial vessel architecture. Request immediate. His flagship lurched violently. The main reactor's containment field flickered as another volley of kinetic rounds punched through the weakened shields and struck the engineering section with impossible precision. Main power failing. Backup systems compromised. Sir, they've disabled our primary weapons grid. Vekthar watched helplessly as his dreadnought, pride of the Imperial fleet, terror of 100 lesser species, went dark. Around him, the rest of his fleet suffered similar fates. Not destroyed, disabled, neutralized with the efficiency of a surgeon's blade. The human warship slowed, hanging in space like a predator surveying its prey. For the first time, Vekthar got a clear look at it through the optical sensors. It was smaller than his dreadnought, sleeker. Its hull bore markings in the primitive human script. HSS Valiant. Then every working screen on his bridge flickered to life simultaneously. An unauthorized communication channel, broadcasting directly through their own systems. The Empire's impenetrable military networks compromised as easily as their shields. A human face appeared on the screen. Female by their species' dimorphic standards. Dark skin, sharp eyes that held no fear whatsoever. Behind her, a bridge that looked nothing like the crystalline elegance of Imperial design. All harsh angles, practical surfaces, and crew members working with focused intensity. Commander Vekthar, the human said, her voice clear and cold. I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Human Stellar Navy, HSS Valiant. Your fleet is disabled. Your weapons are offline. Your communications have been compromised. She leaned forward slightly, and Vekthar saw something in her expression that chilled him more than the tactical defeat. She was smiling. You've spent 3,000 years watching the galaxy. We spent the last 50 years watching you. Every battle, every tactic, every weakness in your ships, your technology, your doctrine. You built an empire on predictability. Captain Chen's smile widened. We built a warship on chaos. The screen went dark, but a single line of text remained, burning in human script with a translation that made Vekthar's blood freeze. Weapons locked, 7 targets acquired, awaiting your response. The Empire's Reckoning. The Imperial High Command Chamber on Orith Prime was a monument to 3 millennia of unchallenged dominance. Crystalline walls rose 50 meters high, etched with the names of conquered worlds. At the center, the Eternal Council convened, 12 of the Empire's most powerful military minds, each representing a major fleet command. Today, that monument to power felt like a tomb. Play it again, commanded Supreme Admiral Kothran, his 4 eyes fixed on the holographic display. For the 5th time, the Council watched Commander Vekthar's fleet get systematically dismantled by a single human warship. The recording, transmitted in Vekthar's final coherent message, showed 40 seconds of warfare that defied everything the Empire understood about combat. Impossible, muttered Fleet Admiral Zendrix. Their technological assessment placed them centuries behind our capabilities. They shouldn't even have working fusion drives, let alone weapons that can penetrate Imperial shielding. The assessment was wrong, Kothran said flatly. The question is, how wrong? Senior Analyst Mira, then, the Council's chief intelligence officer, manipulated the hologram. The battle replay froze, highlighting the human ship's movement patterns. Observe the targeting solutions. Every shot, every maneuver, calculated to exploit specific vulnerabilities in our ship architecture. The shield emitter nodes, the communication relay positioning, The firing arc limitations of our ventral batteries. She turned to face the council, her mandibles tight with concern. They didn't discover these weaknesses during the battle. They already knew them. This was a ship designed, built, and crewed specifically to counter Imperial technology. How long? Kothron demanded. How long have they been preparing this? Based on the sophistication of their systems, decades, Supreme Admiral. Perhaps 50 years or more. The council chamber erupted in voices, shock, disbelief, anger. Kothron silenced them with a gesture. 50 years, he repeated slowly. While we monitored them from a distance, believing them to be primitive, they were monitoring us, learning, adapting. It gets worse, Mira then continued. She displayed a new hologram, a star chart showing the uncharted territories where the human ship had emerged. We've detected anomalous energy signatures in 17 different systems within that zone. Signatures consistent with industrial-scale manufacturing. Fleet Admiral Zendrix leaned forward. You're suggesting they have more of these ships? I'm suggesting they may have an entire fleet we know nothing about. The chamber fell silent. Kothron's primary eyes narrowed. Send a diplomatic envoy immediately. We need to understand their intentions before... Supreme Admiral. A communications officer burst into the chamber, protocol forgotten in his panic. We're receiving a transmission. It's from the humans. Broadcasting on every Imperial military frequency simultaneously. They've broken our encryption. Put it through. The holographic display shifted and Captain Sarah Chen's face materialized above the council table. Behind her, the bridge of the HSS Valiant hummed with activity. But something had changed since her last transmission. The camera angle was wider now, showing more of her command center, and every station was occupied by crew members who looked completely calm. Professional. This wasn't a desperate strike by a cornered species. This was a planned operation. Supreme Admiral Kothron, Chen began, her voice echoing through the chamber. I'm addressing you and the Imperial High Command directly because subtlety has clearly failed. Kothron's mandibles tightened. Captain Chen, you've committed an act of war against the Galactic Empire. Your species faces annihilation for this aggression. Chen's expression didn't change. No, Admiral. Your Commander Vekthar fired first. We have the sensor logs. What you face isn't annihilation. It's something your empire hasn't experienced in 3,000 years. And what is that? Accountability. Chen gestured and the display split. On one side, her bridge. On the other, a tactical map of Imperial space. For 53 years, you've kept humanity under quarantine. You've watched us, studied us, made your assessments. You concluded we were no threat. Primitive, fractious, barely capable of leaving our own star system. She paused. You were right about one thing. We are fractious. We argue, we compete. We can barely agree on anything. Except when someone threatens all of us. The tactical map shifted and Kothron felt his blood chill. Red markers appeared across the display. Dozens of them, scattered throughout the Empire's outer territories. Each one representing a human warship. When you quarantined us, you made a mistake. You gave us a common enemy, a reason to unite, and you gave us decades to prepare for the day you decided we were useful enough to conquer or dangerous enough to eliminate. Chen leaned forward. We watched every Imperial battle, every police action, every conquest. We studied your tactics, your technology, your strategic doctrine. We found every pattern, every weakness, every assumption built into 3,000 years of unchallenged dominance. Then we built ships you can't predict, trained crews in tactics you've never seen, developed weapon systems based not on Imperial technology, but on our own understanding of physics. Different approaches, different solutions. Mira then was frantically analyzing the tactical display. Supreme Admiral, she whispered. Those positions, if those ships are real, they've positioned themselves to strike at our primary supply routes, communication hubs, and fleet staging areas simultaneously. Kothron ignored her. His eyes locked on Chen. What do you want? What we've always wanted. To be left alone. To chart our own course among the stars without your permission, your oversight, or your interference. The Empire cannot simply... The Empire will, Chen interrupted, her voice sharp as a blade, because the alternative is a war unlike any you've fought. You're used to conquering species that follow your rules, use your tactics, fight the way you expect them to fight. She stood, and the camera pulled back to show her full command bridge. Every screen showed different Imperial fleet positions. Every station monitored different aspects of the Empire's military communications. They had infiltrated everything. We don't follow rules. We wrote our own. You want predictable warfare? Civilized engagement? We'll give you chaos, asymmetric strikes, unconventional tactics, technology you can't counter, because it doesn't work the way yours does. Every battle will be different. Every engagement will teach you nothing about the next one. Because that's what humans do, Admiral. We adapt. Behind Kothron, Fleet Admiral Zendrix whispered urgently, Supreme Admiral, our logistics networks are already strained across the frontier territories. If they strike our supply lines simultaneously, if they force us to defend everywhere at once, we can't sustain that kind of campaign. Kothron finished quietly. Chen seemed to hear them despite the impossible distance. Your empire is built on overwhelming force and predictable doctrine. Ours is built on innovation and unpredictability. You have more ships, more territory, more resources, but we have something you don't. What? Kothron asked, though he dreaded the answer. Experience fighting impossible odds and winning anyway. It's what we do best. The tactical display zoomed in, showing the HSS Valiant still holding position near Vekthar's disabled fleet. But now other signatures appeared, emerging from slipspace with perfect synchronization. 5 more human warships, each one different in design, each one bristling with weapons the Empire had never seen before. Commander Vekthar's fleet is disabled but intact, Chen continued. We could have destroyed them. We chose not to. Consider it a demonstration of capability and restraint. You have 72 hours to withdraw all Imperial forces from the quarantine zone and formally recognize human sovereignty over our designated territories. In return, we'll establish a neutral boundary, trade protocols, and diplomatic relations as equals. Kothron's mandibles ground together. And if we refuse? Chen's smile was cold and absolutely certain. Then you'll learn what happens when an empire built on 3,000 years of predictability goes to war against a species that spent 200,000 years surviving by adapting to the impossible. Choose wisely, Admiral. This is the only offer you'll receive. The transmission ended. The council chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, Kothron spoke, his voice heavy with the weight of empires. Analyst Mira, then. Your assessment. She didn't hesitate. They're not bluffing, Supreme Admiral. The tactical positioning is real. The technological capabilities demonstrated, and the psychological profile matches. Humans are capable of extraordinary coordination when facing existential threats. Recommendation? Mira then looked at the tactical display, at the red markers representing an enemy that had outthought them for 50 years without the Empire even realizing they were being studied. Negotiate, sir. Kothron closed all 4 eyes. 3,000 years of Imperial dominance, 3,000 years of unchallenged supremacy, ended not by a superior force but by a species that refused to fight the way empires expected. Draft the withdrawal orders, he said finally, and prepare the diplomatic protocols. It seems humanity has earned their place among the stars. He looked at the empty holographic display where Chen's face had been. Whether we wanted them to or not,